Hi, everyone. First of all, I want to say thank you so much for having me. And Samantha, thank you for sharing your story. It's really brave to be that vulnerable with a room full of strangers. So that's really awesome. Thank you. So let me talk about what we're gonna do, and then I could talk a little bit about myself and let you know who I am and my involvement in this and my involvement in activism. So, is who is gonna play along and do the demo with me? If you want to,
I can hear you.
There we go.
we hear you, Amy.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
Looks like Jenny is doing a demo.
Awesome, awesome.
Amy's gonna do it. And is there anyone else?
Okay. It took a second for the chats to come through, so I'm gonna grab the piece that I'm gonna work on. So, this is the first time I've done a clay demo, so pardon my fumbling around, but here we go. So I have a design. Oh, this is not the right one. I should have been better prepared.
You're perfect. We got a soft crowd here. It's perfect.
All right, so I have a little design that I've drawn out, and then so I use these watercolor pens that I fill with about 50% water and 50% food coloring that are so handy drawing on clay. Um, and the great thing about them is that you can have different colors. So if you do a design that's a little bit more complex, it's really nice to have like multiple colors. Um, and it burns out in the kiln. So sometimes I'll use them to just kind of map out like what I'm gonna carve or what I'm gonna design on the piece, just so it's a very nice visual cue of where I'm going to put the lines. And these pens are not the most perfect. Sometimes they'll leak a little bit, so um, you might have to get used to having stained hands if you use them a lot like me. And I find that I usually use the one that's purple, because A, that's the food coloring that I have most of, and it shows up the best in black clay as well. So it's very, very handy. So I had done a quick outline, but I just wanted to show you guys using the pen just to get an idea of where I'm going to be forming the indents. And this technique is pretty new to me. I actually saw it demoed by Kyle Gaiman at NCECA. And I'm honestly surprised that I don't see more of it around. The concept is pretty simple. What you do is you push the clay out from the inside, and at the same time, you are forming shapes on the outside and compressing the clay in using a tool to kind of um, sculpt whatever shape you want to do. And feel free to put in the chat any questions you have, or I don't know if Amy, you're okay with if people want to unmute themselves and ask questions. I'm fine with that.
Yep, that's totally fine.
Okay.
Can be nice and loose here.
Yeah. Can you guys, yeah, I'm still on the screen. So, and you can be super loose with your drawing, because it's just a guide.
Yes, so this portion is being recorded.
But only the demo will be recorded. So even if you come in and speak, people will hear your voice, but they won't see you.
So
Yeah.
Debbie, when you do this, is it on the softer side of leather hard, or like where is your clay at as far as?
So do you see how
Okay.
the rim flexes? It's pretty soft.
Okay.
And it's going to depend on your type of clay and how much stretch and give it has, because
Okay.
there are some clays that you can manipulate them when they're a little bit drier and they won't crack. But there are some clays that tend to crack a little sooner if they're a little shorter. So it's something that you're going to want to play around with and experiment with the type of clay that you have.
Okay.
This right here is porcelain 16 from Laguna. And I've worked with, using this technique, I've worked with Nara and Frost as well. All of them are porcelains. Um, Frost is probably the trickiest of the bunch to work with. Nara tends to, see my hands get stained. Nara is really nice because it's got a lot of plasticity, so it'll bend with your hands very well before it starts cracking. But uh, Porcelain 16 is kind of in the middle. It's still really, really workable. And just to show you guys a little bit of work that I've done using this technique that I have on hand. So I've done these leaves, these ginkgo leaves, and you can see on the inside, it's pushed out. Like I've shown these to people and people are like, are these slip casts? And no, they're just pushed out. So I'm again a little surprised that like it's not something that is more commonplace. This one too is pushed out from the inside, and I love texture, so I like having something in my hand that like feels neat to hold and it's interesting. Like I'm just a very like tactile person. So to me, this kind of felt like the natural progression to all the carving that I was doing. Um, for example, this is one that I carved. And so these fuck mugs, I started making them back in October, right before the election, because I was starting to have a lot of anxiety about what was going to happen. Even though I held a lot of hope, it was just my way of like putting my feelings into clay. And thinking that like I'm just going to use clay as a therapy to like get these feelings out and move on with my life. And I just never stopped because obviously what happened was not the outcome that we were all hoping to have. So I'm going to explain what I'm doing right now. I have my hand on the inside after I've drawn my design and I'm ready to get started. The clay is still pretty soft. So I start pushing out from the inside and creating some volume outward. And for lettering, you don't need a whole lot of volume. For example, like if you do volume to like do an eyeball like this, like I would start off by just stretching this whole area of clay outward. So I have that extra clay to play with and make the layers of the lid and the scales and stuff. But for lettering, you're not going to have it stick out that much. So you push out a little bit, and then at the same time, you take a tool, a sculpting tool. I like wooden tools the best. You can use silicone tools, and sometimes like I'll switch back and forth. It's nice to have a variety of tools that have different tips to help you make different shapes. So, for example, this one's kind of rounded, and I have one that's a little bit sharper. You can also get wooden tools that have a lot of different shapes. This one and this other wooden one are my two favorite tools. Diamond Core makes these, but there's a lot of companies that make good tools. And if you don't have sculpting tools, like literally you can use anything with a sharp edge to help you out. Like sometimes I'll use this popsicle stick to do certain lines. You can use the back of a paintbrush will work. Your lines won't be as sharp because it's rounded, but yeah, there's there's a lot to play with and experiment with this technique. So as I'm on the inside, and it helps sometimes to have a spray bottle handy and do a little squirt of water on the inside to have your hand be able to glide on the clay as you're pushing it out. And you don't want to push the clay too far, too much. So I do just little bits at a time, and I'll be pushing out from the inside and in from the outside with my tool to give shape to um, the shapes that I'm kind of wanting to make three-dimensional. Let me know, does anyone have any questions so far?
I have a question. So
Yeah.
I don't have anything painty, so I wound up kind of scratching my letters into the surface. I don't know
Yeah.
if I missed you saying don't do that, but that's what I did. And now
No, that's perfectly fine.
this.
You can use a pencil too, like a really soft pencil will leave a mark on the piece. But also because your clay is so wet, it's really easy to get rid of those lines. As long as they're not too deep,
Mm-hmm.
then you'll just be going over them with your tool and smoothing them out eventually. So it's perfectly fine to just scratch them in.
Okay,
And
great.
in fact, I was working on this one, and that's exactly what I had done. I just did the same design when we were chatting earlier. I had gotten this one started. And you can see like the very faint lines. This is just with a pencil. I went in and kind of made a dent with the pencil
Yeah,
for that. So
great. Thank you.
yeah. Um, so yeah, I had asked Kyle about this technique and like, what's it called? Because I've been calling it the push out technique. And he's like, I don't know. I've just started doing this in high school. Um, and I find it a lot of fun to be able to give shape and dimension to the clay without adding extra weight on a piece. And it's really cool to use with celadons. A celadon glaze over it will catch a lot of that texture.
Debbie, you're working at mid-range, is that right? Somebody asked in the chat.
Yes. Yeah, I work out of a community studio, and they only fire to cone 5.5. So that is what I have now. I hopefully will be kind of figuring out my own situation and build a studio in my yard. Maybe sometime this year. I'm still pretty new to clay. I didn't do much of an intro on myself personally. So let me back up for a second. I am a commercial artist, so I've been working as an art director, essentially a graphic designer for agencies for all of my adult life. And yeah, I've been doing art in a commercial sense for the past 28 years. And I am your your typical ADHD hobby jumper. And I found clay. I um I used to do ceramics in high school. I had taken some college ceramic classes, and I found that back then I was just too impatient for it. And I went into a career that was all about print and color and design. Um, but I do marketing for pharmaceutical companies, and there's some creativity in that, but it's honestly a little bit stifling. And I came to a point in my life where I really needed a creative outlet that was not related to my career. So a couple years ago, I started taking classes at a community studio, and I tend to get very obsessed with my hobbies. So, clay became way more than a hobby to me. But it's not like my full-time job. I just enjoy it so much, and I spend so much time and energy learning new techniques. And that's why Amy was talking about how I do a lot of different things and I have a lot of different styles. And that's just because I'm just super curious. And anytime I see something that my brain's like, oh, that looks like fun, I kind of jump into it, which is what happened with carving, and it's what happened with this technique. So here we are doing a demo for a bunch of strangers on the internet.
So
So,
awesome. Yay.
so Debbie, thank you for all that. Um, there is a question, and I think I'll just go ahead and ask it. It's in the chat.
Yeah.
Question is, do you tend to leave the walls thicker when you know you're going to push the texture out, or do you use the same thickness regardless?
So everyone's definition of thickness is different. I know Amy throws very, very thin. And I think that part of that is, where you're at in your ceramic journey as far as how skilled you are to throw super thin or not. I've been doing ceramics for a little over 2 years, so I feel like I'm not at a place where I throw, like, I'll show you how thick the walls of this is, and it'll warp as you're working on it, and that's okay. Hopefully you've compressed it enough, and I have this tool that I use to re-round the rim. So these are thrown, I don't know, I want to say maybe about an eighth of an inch thick. It helps to have them a little bit on the thicker side, and because you're not adding extra clay, you're not adding weight to it. Um, but it's something that you're gonna have to play around with for what works for you, what works with your clay, and what works with whatever kind of design you are trying to do. So that's a very long way of saying if you're somebody like Amy who throws super thin, yes, you are going to want to throw a little thicker because it's going to be super easy to bust through the wall if it's super, super thin. And if you're doing a design that requires more depth, more pushing of the clay, you definitely want to do it a little thicker because you want to have that extra clay to be able to stretch out before it rips to give depth to your design. Does that help answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Am I wetting the tool or just cleaning it off that? Are you talking about this thing right here?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is just a sponge, and yeah, I keep the tool as clean as possible. So if I notice that the clay is sticking to it because we're working with fairly wet clay still, I'm constantly cleaning it off because as soon as that clay dries on the tool, when you go back to press in, you're going to start leaving little marks from the chunks of clay that are dried on your tool. And as you're pushing in, if you see any cracking starting to happen, I have little silicone tip tools that I use, and sometimes I will dip them in water just so they're a little bit wet to add a little bit of moisture. And you just go in and make sure that you're bracing on the inside of the piece and just compress those edges because that'll help, not have your piece crack. So far, I haven't had any catastrophic cracks in anything that I've done with this technique. But again, I'm like, it's still very new to me, and I'm still figuring out where those edges of uh, the limits of my clay are. And I'm playing around with different clays to figure out what works best for what I want to do. And there's it's tricky getting the correct dampness level. So if you're working on something now, or if you go try this out later and you're finding that you're having issues, like just change a parameter. Could it be the clay? Could it be the moisture level? And play around with changing something to see if it helps you be a little bit more successful. It could be your tool, could be that you're pushing too hard, not hard enough.
Debbie, there was another question that just popped up.
Hmm.
So if you're going to add a handle, this happens before that, correct?
Yeah. So because there's a lot of manipulation of the piece and because it's so wet, if I were to add a handle now, first of all, I couldn't be moving it around as much. So it's gonna restrict your movement if you have a handle on it. Also, like the rim will warp enough that if you have an attachment to it, it's probably going to start pulling apart. So, yes, I have a love-hate relationship with handles, as probably a lot of, newer potters do. So, I haven't added handles to any of mine that I've done this technique on yet. I will experiment with that in the future, but I just want to get a little bit better at doing handles. And also, right now, I've just been having so much fun experimenting with this technique that I can only like really improve one thing at a time. So, yeah.
Somebody just raised their hand for a second. If you want to unmute, you can go ahead. But maybe it was by accident.
And also the thing, like, yes, please ask your question if it wasn't by accident, but I just wanted to add that um, you can only move as fast as the clay will let you move. So it's just about little incremental changes. And if you need to add a little bit more moisture to the clay to get it to move where you want it to go, that's okay. Although I did have a piece that had fully dried out and I had to rehydrate it from almost entirely bone dry. That was with frost. And that did not work out well because it was fine, but as it dried, it started getting these giant cracks. So I quickly learned that frost does not like to be rehydrated and then manipulated in this way. And depending on the shape of your tool, you're gonna leave a lot of little marks around your design. It's really easy to go back with a silicone tool and smooth those out. And that's what, as I'm working on this, I will tend to do that and also give it a little bit of a spray with water as I'm working on it because I don't want it to start drying out too fast right now. And sometimes I'll just use my finger to start making the shapes because you can really, really feel the clay and like, start giving it a more natural, organic shape if you want to do that as well. So, yeah. Um, a little bit about my history. I'm an immigrant, so part of the reason why, I'm here and I'm active is, I want to my family and I moved to this country when I was 8 years old, right? And there were, you know, all these promises about America and it being the land of the free and people have rights, but we're at such a place that feels like it's being threatened and it goes against everything that we were told America was going to be. So we're We're at a very scary place right now. So I appreciate everyone being here and supporting and making a difference, going to protests. Like it's gonna take a lot of us to put a lot of pressure on the people that have the power to really make some change. How's everyone doing?
It's not easy, especially I would really recommend people make big letters, not small letters.
Oh yeah, that's something I was gonna talk about, Amy, because I know that you said, oh, maybe I'll put like Potter's Rise Up.
That's exactly what I'm doing. It's so
Yeah, so
hard.
especially if you're doing this for the first time, like go easy on yourself. Just pick a four-letter word
Yeah.
and try it out. Because
Oh,
smaller letters are gonna present more of a challenge. And part of the challenge too is like you're working kind of against the clock because your clay is drying.
mhm.
So if you've got a lot of detail that you're adding in, what I try to do is kind of go through and do the shapes of everything and get everything defined because you can always go in later once it starts to dry a little bit and clean things up. I will often go in with a tool and even stuff out as it's drying um, with my carving tools as well.
That's helpful. So kind of do it a little bit rough at first and get the letters kind of bubbling out a bit and then go back and do the details.
Yeah, exactly.
Let it harden up a little bit. Yeah, because it is weirdly getting softer and softer as I add the water. It's really fun. It's really, really fun to try. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, you also don't want to add too much water.
you're right.
Do you find with your finger on the inside, are you more pushing or are you like rubbing back and forth?
It depends. If I'm stretching, like stretching a larger area, I will rub my fingers back and forth. And that's when it's helpful to spray a little bit of water in there so you don't have any friction. But if I'm just doing the shapes of the letters, it's just like a pushing motion with my finger, like going up and down the letter
Okay, thank
and a
you.
little bit at a time. So I'm just kind of poking my finger on the other side of where my tool is. Like, so my finger right now is like on this part of the K that I'm working on. And I'm kind of going up and down and, supporting the other side from where the tool is to put pressure. And it's very helpful to have, like, for example, to do the inside part of this K, right? You could do it with a straight tool. But if you have something with a point like this, it's a lot
Mm,
easier to
yeah.
get that shape cleanly if you have the right shape tool. And um, you can buy tools, you can also make tools because if you have a popsicle stick and you have a way to cutting it, like you can easily make all kinds of shapes that will help you do different parts of the letters, like a round tool, maybe for the inside of a C, or a crescent tool if you want to do a rounded part of a letter.
Hmm. That would really help having some kind of template type of tools like that. I
Yeah.
recommend that people stay away from S's.
Yeah, S's are tricky.
Oh my.
There was a question in the chat. What are the signs that you're overworking it and should stop? Or is it just like everything with pottery?
That's a good question. I mean, if your clay starts to rip, you've kind of pushed it to its limit, right? So if you're getting ripping in that area, I would just try to heal it the best you can and move on and kind of be like, that part doesn't need any more shaping. Okay, so I got 2 letters to go before we start doing cleanup, just to do the first pass of it. And normally, like the first pass goes pretty quick. For example, like when I'm doing the crocodile eyeballs, the first pass to get the shapes in takes me like 20, maybe 30 minutes. But then going back in, doing all the cleanup, like I let it dry a little bit after that. So once you've got, your shapes in, before you start defining a lot of the details, you want that clay to dry a little bit. So it's doing the cleanup and then carving the scales, like that takes several hours.
How much do you sell your mugs for?
I haven't sold these yet,
Mhm.
so I'm still experimenting with this technique. I don't know. I'm not sure. I like my gut says that I want to start listing the crocodile ones for like 150,
Mhm.
but I find pricing really hard.
Mhm.
I also like because clay to me is kind of a way to stay sane and I really enjoy the process. So I'm not like it's not my salary to live off of. So I tend to do
Demo.
things.
She's putting the words "fuck ice" on it.
To do those four things, it's a path to victory in 2027.
This is
That I think will deliver the largest.
Oh, there we go. Um, it's hard to price things because I'm not relying on ceramics to pay my, you know, mortgage or whatever. But like, and I like to take my time with things, but also, figuring out what that balance is of like getting paid what's fair for the time spent
Mhm.
is hard.
I think charging what you want to charge in that case, especially in that case, 150 sounds great, and it's such a niche item that certain people are just going to be in love with it and they'll buy it, the right people will buy it.
Yeah.
People sell mugs at all kinds of crazy prices.
Yeah. No, it's true. And like there's always like the right buyer for your stuff.
Exactly. Exactly.
How are you guys doing? Anyone have any questions on the technique or on what I do?
I just want to say thank you. I am learning a ton. I have the wrong clay. I'm on a stoneware and it's fairly thin and I wrote too many letters, but I am following through and doing all the steps. So thank you very much for teaching us all how to do this. I think it's going to be super helpful.
Yeah, I'm happy to do so. And if you have any questions afterwards, you guys have my Instagram. Feel free to reach out. I'm super, super happy to like help people find new skills and do new things that they love.
It's awesome. It's really cool. Just to learn something new and different, and you're such a good teacher. And
Thank you. I was a little nervous because I felt a little unprepared, but
the nature of the Zoom meeting.
yeah,
It's totally fine. This is going great, I think.
Yeah, you're
awesome.
natural. Thank
Yeah.
you. Can you tell us like which glazes have you experimented with so far? I know you
Yeah.
mentioned celadons at the beginning, might be a good idea, but what have you seen so far?
So I will show you what I have on hand. I love celadons because I do a lot of carving and it shows off carving really well. I showed you guys, let me move this out of the way so I don't dent it. So I showed you guys this. This is one of the Amico celadons called Marigold. And I tried putting an oxide into the carved lines of the ginkgo, and that washed out. So I'm gonna try doing another one with underglaze. This is another piece that I did with the same technique, and this is rainforest. and it's two coats on the leaves, and I wanted the background to be a little bit darker. So it's three coats of rainforest on the background. And I think rainforest is one of my favorite glazes of all time just because it picks up so many little details in your work. But also, you have to be careful because if you've got nicks, if you've got an uneven surface, rainforest is going to show that. And then for these, the eyeballs, I've been using an underglaze where I sponge on like different colors to give a lot of texture. And then I glaze the eye so it kind of pops. And it's hard to tell on the camera, but if you could see the spaces in between the underglaze, that's glazed with a black Celadon from Amico. And that kind of gives a cool textured effect when you look at it in person. A lot of the pieces, because like they're so textural that I do, and there's a lot of little details and stuff to feel and look at as it moves in the light. So they're best like kind of seen in person. It's hard to photograph these.
I cannot
But
imagine how intricate. Thank you.
They're really amazing.
Yes.
So was the scale part of that just underglaze and no glaze on it?
yeah, so this is all underglaze.
Mm-hmm.
And this was a bunch of different colors that I brushed on ivory for the base, and then I sponged on layers of different browns and reds and some greens in here just to give, that the illusion of the mottled, skin color of crocodiles. And I had also done this turquoise one. I have a couple more in the glaze kiln that I'm super excited to get, but I'll probably get those next week sometime. So,
Really
and
cool.
then
And then with the black glaze, do you put the glaze on and then wipe it down, wipe it back?
yeah,
Glaze it-
so these take there's a lot of steps that happen. So I do the eyeballs and the underglaze all over when they're in greenware stage. And then I get them back and I do a wash to like get into all the little crevices to start bringing out that detail. And then I put under or glaze in the cracks of all the scales. But I don't brush the entire thing in. I have a squeeze bottle, so I go through all the lines.
Right,
Otherwise, it'd be a lot of glaze that I'd be having to wipe away.
totally.
So, yeah. And then I go through and I'll splatter some extra glaze on there just to like add more texture to it. So yeah. And
Lots of work.
this is
Is
Price
the
is
just
is the
going up.
eye underglazed? Oh, sorry.
the
Go
eyes
ahead.
underglazed and then clear glazed.
Okay, thank you.
I think that's what your question was, right?
Yes, it was. Yeah, someone had asked in the chat.
Another thing that you can do that I've tried, so I have this one that I have the faces pushed out and then I carved the rest. And I did a coat of, I think it might have been Storm, a glaze just within the texture and then wiped it away and then put aqua, I want to say, on the rest of the piece. So I have two celadons that like also bring out a lot of that texture through and just create some interest playing with the different celadons. And all the Amico celadons work well together, so it's really nice to layer them. Oh, and I had
Oh no,
one too.
I
This
I don't know if this is actually hypothetical, but say hypothetically, you blow a hole in the side. Do you try to repair or just recycle it?
I would try to repair. I mean, it depends how far. Like if you do it right away and you're like, I don't want to spend time repairing this, like I wouldn't blame you for, tossing it. But if you've been working at it for like, half an hour and you're like, well, this looks, the clay's still wet. It's promising to fix. I have fixed a lot of my pieces, especially like I have carved through pieces as I'm carving, like normally I'll do it on a little pad like this. So the pieces are landing right below the piece. I will grab that piece, dip it in water, and then dip it back from, the place that I've carved it, um, and fix it that way. Obviously, with this, you don't have an extra piece to grab. If you had some wet clay on hand that's similar moisture level, I, could grab a little bit of that and put it on the inside and just kind of smooth it in there. Or what I would do if I have none of that is I would put my hand on the inside, get a little bit of water, not too much, and then just compress that piece down and leave it alone for a few minutes just to kind of equalize and not be too wet. And then you could go back and very gently like keep going in that area, but I wouldn't push it too hard. Does that help answer your question?
I think so.
Yes, totally does. Thank you.
Awesome. Awesome.
It's always great to try to save something if you can.
Yeah. I think there's a lot that you can learn by like figuring out how to fix something. And like, even if you attempt and you fail, there's something that you can learn from like what is worth saving, like then if next time you do the same thing, whether it's time wasted to save it or not, because you've gone down that path before. So I think like there's very little that you do that is a waste of time. I think that if you're thoughtful about what you're doing, you can always get some sort of information out of whatever you're doing, and it'll help you in the future.
So I know this has already been said kind of, but I just want to say it again. What you're doing and what you're teaching is amazing, and I'm super excited to do it, as I think most people here are. But the other thing is you're an awesome educator, and
Oh, thank you.
clear, and just everything about what you are doing in this presentation has been wonderful. Not
Wow.
just the pottery, it's like the pottery and more. And I just want to say that.
I appreciate it. It makes me happy to hear that. You know, I really take joy in helping empower people like find stuff that they love to do. And whether that's like I've had many hobbies in my life, and I used to power lift competitively, and I would get messages from people being like, seeing you like kind of helped me want to compete or feel like I could. Or I used to ride motorcycles, and women that would ride in the back of their husbands' motorcycles would see me ride and be like, I never realized I could do that. So I don't know. I feel like not to get like sappy about it, not to be like this is my life's work, but like I just get so much joy like helping people realize that they can do anything that they really want to do,
Mhm.
and it's okay. Like it's okay if it's not a social norm to do so.
Great if it's not.
Right.
Yeah. I I prefer it if it's not a social norm to do so. Like, am I pissing people off that like are not my friends? That's okay. Like, I hate being told that I can or can't do certain things. So, yeah.
I also want to say that if you do go to Debbie's Instagram page, a lot of her demos are educational, like just the reels are educational. She's showing her process, and a lot of people don't do that. They kind of hold their cards close. And so exactly what you're saying right now is it translates through your whole page, that you are empowering people by showing them what you do. It's really, really cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun making those videos, and I kind of feel like I've learned so much from other potters that have been so gracious in sharing their expertise. And to me, it's a little bit of a way of giving back to the community by, you know, figuring out how to do stuff and sharing it with people. I mean, like my Instagram name, Curiosity, like there's a reason why I picked that name. I'm just like a very naturally curious person, and I'm constantly being like, what happens if I do this? I wonder what happens if I do that. And a lot of times, a lot of these videos just come out of, oh, this worked. And it worked and it looks so good. And I want to share it with people and I want to show people how to do it. So that's why and you know, that's why I post those videos. Oh yeah, I think we can stop recording. I think you
Okay.
guys